Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Long time no see.
Welcome to D&D Play 20. We are a group of fantastical people that play D&D and are silly very often here on Twitch. If you want to join our crazy community, feel free to join our Discord. We have one super amazing and supportive community, and you can join in multiple games, several of them, either long-term campaigns or pop-on games like the trailer you just saw for Citizens of Bendelin. And this is Legends of Methis. It's been a long minute since we've been live with this campaign. Mia culpa, I have been ill, but I'm back, and we're gonna get back into it and try to see where these three misfits are gonna go. So let's reintroduce the players. Just a heads up, everyone, this is a homebrew campaign in the homebrew world, so if things are not quite as you expect, just take it in stride. And we'll start with Cinder. Introduce yourself.
Who, me? Hi,
No, the other Cinder.
I'm Cinder. Oh, the halfling. There actually is another Cinder. Spelled differently, though.
No, you're not
Hi,
the
I'm
halfling.
Peter. I play Cinder. I don't remember my last name, but it doesn't matter because
Alright.
he'll be dead before too long. I play a divine sorcerer? Yeah, that's it.
We'll get back into it.
Yeah, you're and you do play a divine soul sorcerer. And what race are you?
I am Fearwald,
Hey, we got it.
Ta-da!
and I'm falling to pieces, as you can see. Well, actually, you can't see because
You can't see it very well, yeah. Well, you're not missing much. We'll follow up with Nyx. And by the way, actually, Lorcan, and the names are messed up. Lorcan and Nyx are switched around on the stream.
Disgraceful.
absolutely.
So, Lorcan, introduce yourself correctly now.
I'm Jonathan. I'm playing Lorcan Stronghammer. He is a Dragonborn. Bronze Dragonborn.
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
Brass.
You're
Brass.
fine.
Brass.
Brass Dragonborn.
Brass.
And he's very much into fighting and beer. And always buddies up with his pal Nexus. Aye. It's good fun. And he's taken a thing for giants. So.
Best of both worlds.
You are a. What's your subclass of fighter?
Rune Knight.
No,
Rune Knight.
Rune Knight.
Rune Carver.
Carver's
I like Rune.
the other thing.
Yeah. Alright, and finally we have Nyx.
All changed.
Who is not a Rune Carver. Nyx is played by me, Raza. She is alchemical savant, halfling rock gnome, who is trying to work out so many things right now. So many things in her mind. Plots and diseases and the such. Hopefully she can keep everyone afloat and guide them well. That's all she wants to do. It's help. Yeah. That's pretty much Nick's bossy boots in bossy boots.
And she dreams of lizard people.
And I am
You don't know her dreams.
Gem, or Vagabunda, or Miranda, depending on what and where you know me from. And I will be kicking everybody's butt today. Hopefully.
Oh no.
She can try. And then until she does.
Until she does, exactly. Well, because it's been a hot minute since we've been here, I'm gonna do a bit of a longer recap. I'm not gonna recap everything that's happened, but I'm gonna recap what's happened, at least since you've gotten to Carolon. We are in the country of the 7 cities, We are in the metropolis
Metropolis.
of Carillon, the biggest city of the country, and which is basically entirely constituted of Dragonborn, and which is where Nexus and Larkin are from. And there's been a few things that happened here in Carillon. The first order of business when they arrived was to deliver the child, the Dragonborn child they found along the way, the only survivor of an envoy that had been attacked by these
UNT.
UNT brood guards that have been attacking multiple convoys all over the Freelands and the Seven Cities, and they protected the child. They managed to find them, protect them. They gained some information from a very mysterious Kalashtar that they found, and they made their way and brought the child to its surviving parent in the city. And after that, they decided to go see Larkin and Nexus family. They met Larkin's very nice parents and the dysfunctional family of Nexus, and realized that Nexus's mom is quite famous in the city. She is a gladiator, a arena fighter that performs incredible feats and incredible spectacles against all sort of opponents, and she's one of the best. And she had been put into hospital by an opponent that had, as far as they knew, cheated and tried to kill her. She's very pissed off about it, and eventually they learned also that there seemed to have been some demons spotted in the city, some rumors of places that were overrun by demons, which the party is very cautious of, very wary of, because in Swiona, the city where they were previously, they had a few encounters with demons, and they know that there's part of this condition that is turning people into UNT brood guards comes from these demons. They don't really know where they're coming from or what their goal is. They also finally unravel the mysteries of the letters they had taken from a drow hideout that were encrypted. They finally managed to decipher them and discover that there is plans of war to conquer all of Methis, and especially starting by the Federation of Bologna, which is the kingdom of the elves, and they are aligned with a serpent god and the tieflings, who had been ostracized since the last war. And they also have mentions to demons and to finding some of Delin, the god of creation and invention, some of his creations, some of his mechanical contractions. Putting all of this together and asking Nexus parents for Nexus and Larkin's parents for what's been going on around the city, they finally met Nexus's father, who is apparently one of the council members that rules Carillon, and who is an outright prick.
He's a delightful fellow. I don't know what you're talking about.
And who apparently threatened Nexus to leave the city to save his mom, since the one who was behind the cheating opponent and the one who's trying to kill her is his father.
See, delightful fellow.
Nexus obviously confided in the party, and the party decided that with the information they knew, they might find out more about Nexus's father's plan in a brothel that he was known to visit and support and sponsor. So on they went. It coincidentally was the same brothel that was rumored to have been overrun by demons after a massive crime has been committed, a mass homicide in the brothel. So they went there to disguise themselves. Nix pretended to try to want a job. Cinder was a client. Larkin
So she got the job.
She got the
Good
job.
God.
Larkin knew one of the workers there, was a friend of his, and they gathered some information and realized that we were indeed demons. Cinder was nearly killed by a succubus, which he killed in turn and
bath.
managed to escape.
Hmm.
And Nix realized that the somehow related to them were at least Rakshasa, at least one Rakshasa. And this is concerning. They also found a map that when they fled the brothel and returned to a inn, were discussing, which is the squares you see on the current map. They found a small map with runes they cannot understand, and except for one, which is the giant rune of King, and an X on the map where Nexus's mother has explained that there used to be a path that young gladiators did, a pilgrimage to the wastelands and back, but that now there's a massive hole that nobody dares to approach. The map seemed to point to have an X marked exactly on that spot and be a bit more detailed than the larger map of their way to the wastelands, which, by the way, they want to get to because the sands of the wastelands are meant to help Cinder and Nexus condition slow down, if not cure it, which they themselves are infected and slowly turning into broodgars or decaying into death. So they decided that the best way, the quickest way across would be through that hole, but they don't want to risk it.
No.
And that hole, for all they know, could be where the demons are coming from. Definitely don't want to risk it. But Cinder came up with what initially was thought to be a silly idea of flying across, but Nyx remembers that there was a ship that Delin, the god of inventions, created and was considered his only failure, and that nobody really knows much about, and she never really paid attention to it. But she wondered, perhaps, could she find it, or could she make one herself, looking at the schematics? So, our little artificer asked Lorcan and Nexus where a library would be, because that's the most likely place where she would find such information. It was late at night, though, and so they retired for the evening, and we're going to set off in the morning to said library. That is where we'll pick it up. So, it's been a lot. I forgot to mention one thing. They also know that the next day, there's going to be a rematch of Akra, Nexus's mom, and the cheating opponent.
Oh, that's the next day.
Yes, right. It was 2 days. So you guys now slept. It's 1 day away.
One more day.
Can't wait.
So there's also that. People are advertising this epic battle, the rematch of one of their favorite gladiators.
Have we found out who her opponent was yet?
No, you've not found out. Well, she's
Don't know
told
yet.
you the name, but you don't know.
We really need to find out. Like, we need to
who
go
he
meet this
is
person.
or anything. Yes, you haven't found anything else. All right, so you all wake up in the inn, unless there's something you'd rather do before breakfast. You all come down for breakfast, and
Next is a question.
yes, go for it.
One of the things that she found in the Velvet Touch was the old longsword, obviously, the letter, the map, and a spell scroll. Did we establish what the spell scroll was? Does she need to look into it?
Yes, you did. You did. So Nyx couldn't recognize what it was. She knew it was some sort of enchantment, but Cinder rolled really, really well and recognized some of the runes, saying that this is some kind of memory modifying enchantment.
Thank you.
High level.
Just what you needed.
Thank you.
That was established last time. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
No worries.
If Cinder's ever annoying, we can just make him forget about us.
Yeah, pretty much.
Trust me, Cinder's player already has.
So, as you all come downstairs and are being served breakfast, feel free to discuss the order of business for the day.
So it's not
So,
make notes.
why do you need to go to this library?
She's going over notes. Well, it's something that Cinder mentioned about flying there. I know that there was notes on a flying ship, or like an invention that Dylan worked on that wasn't quite.
It was a boat that was not for water. What it was for, you don't know.
Yeah, but ships can be flying ships as well.
Yes, but you don't know if it's a flying ship.
Yeah, so.
You know it's
So-
a
but
ship
the same,
that is
this-
not for water.
So this,
You're
Yeah.
hoping it's a flying ship.
That's what she was She was.
I don't
referring
know if I can just hope that it works. I'm on limited time, as you well know. Are you
I'll
trying to
take
let me
it.
die? Because I can just go off into a corner and die. It's,
No, I don't want. Well, no, I don't want you to die. I put too much work.
what was the hesitation?
It's too much paperwork.
Cinder, have you had
Oh, she
your happy
doesn't.
pills this morning?
That
Oh,
was
look,
Raza,
she
the
goes-
player, saying, "Well, I do, but she don't."
Now look, you keep saying that, Cinder, and you keep implying that I'm waiting for you to die, or don't take this seriously. I'm taking you very seriously. So, please stop saying that. She's getting a little annoyed with Cinder.
Okay, well, the thing is, I wasn't given much longer to live, and who knows where this library is? Does anybody know?
I think
Lorcan
Vulcan
knows
does.
that it's like half an hour walk from where you are.
The Lost
only
Library
an hour
of
walk.
Carolon. It's down. It's just that way.
It's a half-hour walk to a lost library.
I wouldn't say it's lost time. I mean, it's the city library.
It is the city light.
I don't know. Maybe I should. Okay,
Yes,
I guess.
Look, I just want to take a look. If I cannot find schematics, if I cannot find anything relating to it, we'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way.
Hey, you never know. You might find a teleportation spell in there. Lorcan has no idea what's in a library. So I just like
Yeah.
he only ever goes to like the barrack ones and the archives. So
Yeah.
We could be so lucky, but that has its own complications. So we'll stick with
he
flying.
knows it's just
If I
books.
die
That
before
wasn't-
we get there, Adrian has my permission to eat you while you're sleeping.
You're not dying. She's like
Oh,
really
yeah.
annoyed with him. She's like, stop saying that.
Look at me! That's not.
I mean, you are
A healthy
perpetually in a
person.
state of decay, yes, but you are not going to die.
Yes,
If I can help
has
it.
Adrian been snacking a bit more? I mean,
She does
Next
look a
is
bit
like,
puzzled.
well, he's going to die, and I'm not dying, but I am transforming into something that people will kill. So, I'm kind of with him.
You are not going to transform. As far as if I can help it. Now stop.
it's alright, it might make you look a bit prettier.
Haha.
Oh, sure, you'll save his life. Because you got the hots for him.
Can we go to the library now, please?
Yes. I kind of been put off my food, but yes.
Alright, so I've changed you onto the map. Of
You
the
changed
city.
me. Oh boy.
This is where you are.
Yep.
And the library is this building.
That big round one?
Mm,
No, little round one, I don't know. The round one.
yes.
The round one.
There is another library, bigger, which
But
is
it's in the
part of the
inner
council, but you're not allowed in the inner wall. So in the inner circle. So for you guys, don't forget this is the outer wall, the inner wall, and the circle. You're allowed to go into the inner wall one because of Larkin's connections. You're not allowed to go into the inner circle because that's the council library. So
Oh, for crying out loud.
we'll have to make do with this one. So yeah, Larkin, you've been there.
Around.
You've been around there. You've seen the building. You know where you're going, more or less. I would like you to roll me a survival
Oh, I forgot to get my dice ready.
as you walk through perilous streets.
Survival through the streets. Perfect.
Yes.
I'm gonna get mugged by Nexus's mum.
So Larkin's been around, huh?
Larkin has been around.
That's
He's
survival.
considered the handsome one of the two.
14.
Yeah, I mean, it takes you about 40 minutes instead of half an hour, but you get there.
Not dead. That's fine.
You get there, and Nick's, it's in terms of the size, probably the biggest library you've been to. The building, at least, is enormous. But then again, you've noticed that most of the buildings in the city are built big. Like it's ostentatious. It's
Grand.
grand. Yeah. So, as you walk in to the Grand Library, it is a pretty library. There is
Oh, it is.
it's all in brown shades. There's books. The shelves are mostly around the books. The books on the shelves are mostly around columns. Beautiful sculpted columns. Is granite all through and through. It is a beautiful library. And as you walk in, you see a attendant at a desk right at the entrance, which I'll show to you if it lets me.
Nix is looking around. She goes, now this is a little bit bigger than Port of Grace's library.
It's about 20 times as big.
A little ostentatious, though, I say. She kind of walks towards the attendant.
Well, it is 20 times bigger. That's- Well,
yeah.
good luck trying to find what you want.
And she goes, thanks. And she goes towards the attendant. Hello. In her most friendliest, sweetest voice.
You see that she looks ahead.
Oh yeah, she looks up. She looks around. Nix is getting used to it. Hello.
And then she looks down. Oh my. Hello.
Hello.
How can I help?
Hello. I'm Nix. I was hoping you could help me find any books pertaining to Dellen's flying invention.
She looks at the Dragonborn with you. Do you have permission to people?
Yeah.
Hold on.
She's just like.
Is she talking to me?
No, she's talking to Nix.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. We have clearance. He works here in the city. He's a guard.
Oh, I see. Are you some diplomat from a different town?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Are you some diplomat from a foreign town?
You could say that, yeah. An exchange program, yeah. She.
Oh, very well. My name is Eric Valiasa. You said you were looking for information on Dylan.
And it's anything pertaining to his flying invention.
I've never heard about that. And you see she turns and she waves her hand. And behind her there was this big painting. It looked like a painting, like a big canvas. But as she waves her hands, that canvas becomes a massive book, and she flicks it. It is the library's catalog. You
Wow.
can you read Draconic?
Next wishes. She's just admiring that she doesn't know about Draconic.
Okay, so you don't understand it. If she
Yeah.
searches it and searches it, and she goes, I have quite a few books on Dylan's inventions, but there's none that mention a flying ship. 1 second. And you see that she waves her hands, and it again returns to being a massive painting. And she pulls out a smaller catalog from under the desk. And she opens it and she skims through it. This time careful to not let you see what's written there. And she goes, I mean, the only comprehensive list of all of Dylan's inventions is in our restricted section.
Smiles. She goes, of course, I don't know how much.
There are several books on his main inventions.
Where is the restricted section?
It is restricted.
To what level?
You would have to have a written pass by one of the council members or their representatives to go through it.
No, I understand. I was just curious.
Otherwise, trust me, I could take you there, but that would be walking you into your death, and I don't feel comfortable with that.
Of course, we do not want that, and we do not want to put you in a difficult position. We should be right back with the authorization that you need.
Would you still not like to see the books?
Oh,
of
yes.
his inventions?
Ah, yeah, we'll take a look at that. Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
Well, we're here.
Let me guide you. And she walks, guide you through the library, and she says, this shelf is about Mr. Dylan's life, inventions, and community work at Fiona, the foundation of the Dylan Foundation, I guess. And most of the information we have there is readily available to the public. Please, make yourself comfortable. And she walks by.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So she will make it a show of looking through some of the catalog, but then she'll lean over to Cinder.
You see that Nexus is looking around and looks at Mark and says, how bad would it be if we sneeze and a bit of fire comes out of ours?
I don't think you want to think about that.
Just wondering.
I think the lady would murder you.
Yeah. And what were you gonna say to Cinder?
No, I was telling him not to touch the books.
No. Nix was gonna lean in to Cinder
Oh.
and say something.
So, sorry, she's just taking notes real quick. Cinder, we
Yes.
need authorization to get in there. Either that, or I could try go unseen, but they probably have ways of protecting against magic, like in the other wards.
We could put Lorcan in a disguise.
Or you could go in the disguise.
Yeah, she's like, or you're the one that
Nexus?
changes appearance.
Nexus in a disguise.
Or you could make your own disguise in there, and you can look like Nexus's father. He's a council member. He can give us the authorization.
Oh,
we
I
need.
don't think that's gonna work. What if I disguise myself?
She's confused
I would like
by that.
everyone to roll me perception.
Is she listening?
I would like everyone to roll me.
We're outside, right?
No, you're in front of.
We're whispering.
Perception or
Are you?
deception?
Yeah, we're not screaming our
Perception.
plans with the well arms. Yeah. Perception.
I got a 9.
Yeah, Lord, dude, this is just a shit.
12.
Same for Cinder. Cinder's just trying to figure out what Nyx is saying. Nyx, what's your perception?
Blah, 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 blah. Sorry, that's not English, is it? That is a 21, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Alright. There is, as you look around and you're exasperately Cinder, you roll your eyes, there's a shimmer that catches your eye.
Shiver. Sorry.
Shimmer.
I have an idea. I could bind her up in ice and hold her in place, and we could go grab whatever books we need and run out.
I'd rather we didn't turn this into a heist. We're just here for a book.
But see that the books are in a different place.
Oh.
Also, and so Nyx is where's the shimmer? So she's
On
trying
the
to keep
wall.
everything casual. Where?
On the wall.
Near the wall. Okay.
On the wall, I said.
On the wall. So she's gonna be all nonchalant, and then she's going to subtly cast Detect Magic to see if she can glimmer the nature of the shimmer.
You ritually cast it?
No,
No.
I'm casting it.
As you cast Detect Magic, you notice that there's quite a few lights that pop around. All the lights in the library seem to be magical. You assume that it's, in protection of, instead of having flames.
Yeah.
There is a few books that are magical here and there across the library. But the shimmer, as you look at the shimmer that you saw on the wall, you'll see that where you have this wall with like two chairs, and there's a little bit of a space between them and a painting, you find illusory magic. But it's a cross. So you'd have to cross the main corridor of the library and therefore cross her line of sight.
Okay. She'll let everyone know. She goes.
I know.
Obviously, you all see her cast her magic, and she sends like a sensory pulse out, and she looks at you and goes, "There's something over there that it catches my eye, but I'm gonna need someone to make me a distraction."
Why don't we just tell her that we just want to browse all the books here, and then when she's not looking,
I'll
we go
walk
to the
over
kitty
to the
section.
lady.
What?
My dear lady,
Yes.
you wouldn't happen to have any books on giants, would you?
That's no giants have been sighted in nearly 100 years. Yes, there is quite a section on giants. I'm sure. Let me just check where it is exactly. This is she. Where's her hand?
Yeah. So what she's
When
doing
she
that.
knows that, she's got her back to you.
Yeah. So Nyx is like shimmying along as she's got like her catalog open. So she's getting towards the shimmer,
Alright.
and she's gonna
Next is
grab it.
following you, and what is Cinder doing?
Sneezing toward the illusion magic.
Alright.
Achoo! And I cast
Oh no.
Dispel Magic.
Alright.
Okay.
Oh wait, that's the wrong spell right there.
Oh, bless you, Cinder. Please keep the
As
noise
you
down.
as you cast the spell magic, you cast it, and I need you to roll
Ooh, it's high. It's high level.
charisma. I need you to roll a charisma ability check.
Ability check.
Yeah. 'cause
Charisma
it's-
ability check.
it's a
Yeah, so
spell.
basically when you dispel magic, if it's higher than a third level or lower, you need to try to beat the spell
Okay.
level DC.
Oh, I thought you was like trying to chout the wall or something. I was like,
13.
Unfortunately, that doesn't do it.
Oh, wait. I have advantage, right?
No,
have
unless you have
inspiration?
inspiration.
No, I don't.
You got any rerolls?
I don't know. Let me check.
Check.
I do. I have 9 rerolls. There.
Oh, damn.
That
That-
covers the second roll.
I'll do it.
All right, they'll do it. 20 will do it. And as Cinder sneezes, you see this opening. The wall suddenly has an archway with a chain across with a wooden plate saying restricted section.
Oh, great.
However,
Other chains.
as Cinder casts the spell, she turns, no magic allowed, please.
What magic?
And she starts to make her way to you guys around to check what magic was cast.
Cinder, stop sneezing.
I'm sorry. I'm so congested and. Oh, I held that one in.
Are you stopping her, Mark?
Yeah, where did you say the giant stuff was?
I'm sister. Did someone just cast
Next.
magic?
Oh, yeah,
sorry.
it's just Cinder sneezing. He's got magical sneezes.
I'm sorry. It
The
slipped.
magic is not allowed inside the library. Only
Cinder, you're not allowed in the library.
spells
What?
can be
What?
cast inside the library.
Do you have any antihistamine? Garlic?
Cinder, are you still where you were when you cast it, or did you come back to the main bit?
I came back.
Okay. She goes, please. If I notice magic being cast again, I will have to throw you out. And you see,
Okay.
she looks around and she doesn't see any damage. So, she rolled a nat 1. Not my fault. So she's like, please. Yes, your giant section. It's this way. And she walks with you forward a couple of meters and shows you to it. And then rolls back.
So the chains.
It is, however, on the same side as Nix's, the main corridor.
Oh, cool. I'm actually interested in the giant stuff, though.
Okay. Yes, Nix.
So it's just the restrict. It's just. Did you say there was like a padlock, like chains across?
No,
the
it was a
restricted
chain
section?
across.
But she assumes it's a mundane chain. It's a spell magic.
There's, there's no magic that you detect.
Okay.
But it
So
feels like
Nix-
a really poor,
Okay.
a really poor, just to have an illusion spell. It seems really poor, really poor defenses. Like, there must be more to it. Even if you can't detect magic.
You're gonna risk it?
Yeah. So Nyx got the opening she needed. So as all this is happening, she pulls out this this flask from her pouch. It looks like there's nothing in it, but obviously there's like a swirl of liquid in it. As she unstopples it, she will imbue her tincture of the unseen. So she is casting invisibility, and she's gonna make her way to the restricted section. Carefully though, because if she can't see it with detect magic, she's just gonna keep her eyes open for any other kinds of defenses that might not be magical in nature. So she's going to,
So you stepped in.
Oh no.
while examining, I was just saying, examining if there's any traps.
Did you examine if there was any traps before you stepped in?
Yeah, I didn't step in. I said I just cast invisibility, and she's gonna look before she
Okay.
steps
An
in.
investigation?
Boom!
She's not gonna just step
Oh, no.
in after thinking, oh, there must be something else there. She's not cray. That's Cinder's department.
The rest of you are not going with Nyx?
We can't. We're distracting the librarian.
That's
You're
fair.
now on the right side. It's the
Do you want to
librarian doesn't
go-
have it. What do you
No,
do?
actually, you stay here, just in case.
Nyx is like, I'll stay. She's pretty.
Nexus, could you
Uh,
find any books on your condition, maybe?
Sure. I'll do that.
It gives you the chance to chat to the lady.
I'll do that. So Nexus goes to the front desk and is chatting to the lady. What is Cinder doing?
Cinder's just gonna randomly look at books in the library, walking around.
You're not going with Nyx.
No.
Okay.
Oh boy.
And
So I
Morgan?
hear just Nick's dying by herself. Got it.
She was
This is
counting on
24.
me to trigger something, I bet.
No. Well, Orkin, what are you doing?
How far away am I from Nyx?
10 meters?
So I know where she is.
Yeah. Well, you just saw her pop out of existence.
Cinder, she's doing something weird again.
So,
Okay, I have a question. Did you cast invisibility or did you drink a potion?
It's technically the spell, but that's how she flavors it as an alchemist. There's a tincture. of
Okay,
it,
so it's a second level spell. Again, the lady goes.
You subtle cast.
But I was doing it while she wasn't looking.
She
That
said
wasn't part of the
that
session.
she was nowhere near looking. She had her back to you guys when Cinder cast the spell magic.
Oh.
She goes up. She again tries to fight. She immediately turns around
Right, it's not her. It's something else, like a sensor, but maybe.
and goes towards again. Goes towards and finds you,
Cinder
Nyx.
finds her.
Finds where you were, where the magic came from.
Like the origin. I was
Realizes
like, wow,
that.
she got true sight? Like, damn.
No, but she realizes that something is triggered and is unveiled the restricted section. So she turns around and says, "Please leave the library. I said no magic allowed." And
I didn't do
I said
anything.
you are not allowed in the restricted section. And you see she pulls out a scroll and it waves her hands and it disappears again as a wall.
What restricted section?
Yeah, there's no restricted section.
Please leave the library.
But I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just over here browsing the books.
You cast magic in the library when it's not allowed twice.
I did not.
Miss, I can't even cast magic.
But it is all of you. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. I warned you.
Okay.
Larkin. Can I bind her up with ice now?
No.
Fine. I'll leave, but I don't like it. And when the king finds out you kicked out his daughter, he's gonna be mad.
I'll just whisper
Which
this.
king?
What?
Which king?
Precisely, the witch. No, I'm joking. Let's go.
I don't know. Whichever
What's
person
going
we
on
said
there?
Nyx was the daughter of that time.
Where is your other friend? Please gather all.
She already left.
before we-
Or-
No one left across. No one passed through my desk. That is the only
Oh.
exit. Please gather your
Not seen
friend.
them. Okay.
I will give you 5 minutes to leave.
5 minutes?
No
I can
worries.
do a lot of damage in 5 minutes, guys.
Oh, don't say that.
Oh, I mean, okay, we're leaving.
Nyx is there, just slapping her head invisible.
So, this is going as well as it normally does. What does a 24 get me for investigation?
There are traps past the chain, but you got a glimpse of them and then it was gone
Right.
because she
So
recast.
she can't. Could she try, now that she knows it's an illusion, could she try and pierce through it? Like, can she try and, like, is it like a way to, like, see through the illusion, knowing that it is an illusion? Or is it just, nope?
Let me check.
Not a clue.
Knowledge is power, you know? If she knows it's an illusion.
Can I give her a hug and then thunderbolt jump?
Who, Nyx?
Please don't thunderbolt jump.
The library.
No.
Oh, the librarian. Please don't do that either.
Well, y'all are just taking all my fun.
It's a shame you can't just put her to sleep.
Yeah, you could just do something subtle like.
I can do. It is a pleasure meeting you. Will she shake my hand?
Oh no. Not the
Did
sleep.
she walk back to the desk yet?
Yeah, she's not. She's waiting for you to find your friend. And she said, you look a bit,
She's like, yeah, I don't want to touch you.
That is so bigoted. I'm reporting you right away. How rude.
I meant no offense. I just.
Well, I'm afraid I took offense because you are treating the sick person like some monster.
I just need to be careful because I care for the books. I can't. I apologize. But I'm gonna have to insist that you find your friend and leave the library.
How rude. Can I slap her?
Otherwise, what?
What? Huh?
Simply go and
Who
slap.
said that?
I'm going to have to call the guards otherwise.
Maybe I want you to with the way you just treated me. Insinuating
Nick's
that
hero.
there is something contagious or gross about me. I am a fearbulg. Have you never seen a fearbulg? We all look like this. Our pustules burst all the time. You should see what's under this eye patch.
No, please don't. No.
Fine, I'm leaving.
Where's
I
your
storm
friend?
out.
I think she went to find a book. I'm not too sure where she wandered.
You have to find your friend and leave, otherwise I'm going to have to call them.
I'll find her. I'll go look for her. I'm gonna start going over around the sections that are further away.
Outside, Cinder is gonna find a piece of wood or something to make a sign out of, and he's gonna make a quick sign. I don't know if I can do it with prestidigitation, but it's gonna say, "The librarian here is a bigot," and start marching back and forth in front of the door.
Nix.
Nix,
Where are you?
Is there no way to pierce through the illusion?
Yeah, I forgot. Sorry.
Nix is like,
Yeah, sorry.
that's okay. No, I was
I
just waiting
forgot.
patiently.
Too much happening.
I know.
Uh,
A lot is happening with Cinder.
Heck no! Let my posture show.
Pardon?
You'd be an
But it's
investigation.
Investigation? Will she have advantage because she knows it's an illusion, or it's just a straight roll?
Do I give you advantage?
Do you?
No, what's
No.
that? I didn't catch it.
No.
No. It's a straight roll?
That's
19.
Yeah, you see through it. You guys are sure you're gonna leave her alone to do this.
To do what?
Yeah.
What next?
Yeah.
Well, we kind of. Hey, she doesn't have to do it. She can come out with us.
Hmm.
Alright. Or you could go with her. Sure.
What, into there?
Yeah.
How? The clerk's there.
So,
You never
Nick's-
tried to get the clerk to do anything.
So Nick,
yeah,
you-
so
Things.
you can see through
so
it.
Nix knows, like, there's not enough time to get through this and find the book. In 5 minutes, all shit's gonna go, it's gonna you know,
Yeah,
come down
it's
on
not
them.
enough time. Really.
So all she wants to do is study the defenses for future reference. That's it. She's just gonna
Okay.
leave with them. She's not gonna go in. It's not enough time.
Alright. Sure. Give me another investigation.
This is recon now. It turned from like, let's find a book to like, let's not get arrested.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ. Do I want to do that? Yeah, I'll use a reroll for that. That was not a good roll. Try again. I'll just pop it on the deck. There you go, Dan. Try again. Wow, that was marginally better. That is gonna be a 17. Was it? 15? 15. Damn. It's a terrible roll, bro. 7 plus 8. Not the worst roll. The previous roll was a 3. So it's not. 7 is better than 3. So 15.
15. Yeah, you start to look and there seems to be pressure plates on the floor. You also note little round holes along the wall.
Oh, delight.
Along the
Fishing
walls
nets,
on both
the
sides.
booby traps. Got it.
And that's with a 15. That's all you get.
That's all she needs to know. That it's gonna take more
It
than 5 minutes to
curves
get through that.
downwards after a certain point. There's stairs down that come down.
Nah, yeah, it's enough for her to know this is not possible in the time she has. So yeah, she heads back towards the entrance and she'll pop out of invisibility, and she goes, "Guys, are we not going? I thank you for letting us look at the library, the books, very interesting. Sorry that there was some magic cast by Cinder. He does have allergies. Sorry, we didn't mean to intrude or cause trouble." And she will get everyone to leave with her.
Yeah, as you say that, she says, "Wild magic is particularly dangerous, so please refrain."
Our apologies.
using it in the library."
Cinder's not allowed back anymore.
Basically, and it's not as Cinder.
Right.
And you all leave the library. And Nexus goes, "So we found the restricted section. We could have gone through, but we didn't because Cinder cast spell. But I only saw him do it once. I believe him."
It wasn't just.
Believe
It
Cinder?
wasn't just. Yeah.
I know,
It
it's
wasn't
weird,
just
isn't it?
Because it wasn't just his fault. I wasn't sure how the defense of the library worked, so I went invisible, and that probably triggered the second warning.
So you got us kicked out. I think you owe someone an apology.
She goes, "I am sorry, everyone. I guess I wasn't as smart as I thought I was, but there was no way I could get in and out of those defenses in 5 minutes, so..."
I guess we'll just have to get Nexus's father to get us in.
I'm not talking. My dad said I needed to leave. I'm glad that we haven't stayed at home so he doesn't know if I'm still here or not. That's the point.
Well, it doesn't need to be him. I mean, we've already had a pregnant dragonborn with us before.
Which was my original idea, but I don't know how well that's gonna go.
So you want Cinder to pretend to be my dad?
It's gonna be very well.
After we just got kicked out? I mean, yeah, it was Cinder that she needs to cast the magic, right?
Yeah.
That would work.
And as far as I can tell, I don't think she can tell if we cast magic outside the library. Only inside.
No, she doesn't know what we cast anyway.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I don't want to go back in there.
He's offended still.
Just think, Cinder, the chance to get one ahead of her.
Yeah.
She was rude, and I don't want to be exposed to such rudeness ever again.
Oh, if you do this, you'll be able to put her in a place. You'll be a counselor.
I
You could
beg.
say that you heard of the complaint.
Yeah, there was my good friend Cinder that got kicked out.
Who am I supposed to be?
Nexus's
Nexus's father.
Dad.
He's evil.
But he's a counselor.
Yeah.
Wait, Nexus? You want me to pretend to be related to him? Oh,
I
no,
agree.
no. That is not going to happen, people. You need a better plan. I'm sorry, but
I just try to do my better plan, and it doesn't work. This is the plan.
Just think, if you're Nexus's dad, you can tell him what to do.
no. And plus,
I
Nix,
like the pause.
Nix, don't forget you still got to feed me grapes.
I will feed you the grapes
Thank
if you
Greg.
get a.
You'll feed
If
me
you-
those grapes regardless, because you already promised.
Cinder,
I'll
I'm
tell you
trying
what.
to do this for you. This is for me to get you to the waste quicker. Do you not want to be cured
Wait,
quicker?
are you telling me if I don't do this, I die? Are you threatening me?
Nick's the most unthreatening specimen in the world, unless she's, I guess, angry. She looks at him like, I am trying to help you. This is the whole purpose of coming to the library, is to find a way to get there quicker.
You see
It's
that
not a
Nexus
threat.
shakes his head. I didn't think you were like that.
She looks at him. She goes, she goes, oh, quiet down, mama's boy. And she looks at Cinder. She's annoyed. That was like, she's
Can I
bristling right
pretend
now.
to be his mother instead?
She's not
No,
a council
she's not
member.
a counselor.
She cannot get us the clearance.
But she's famous. Maybe she can get some favors.
Could ask her mum.
Ugh. This is so distasteful, and you know I don't like doing gross things.
We know, Cinder. We apologize for making you do questionable, gross things.
If I do this,
Yes.
what do
Well,
I
you-
have
If
to
you d-
sound like?
It's just a gruff voice.
I don't want input from him. This is bad enough.
she's like, but he's the best one to give you it. She's like, I give up.
Pretend to be an arrogant prick. He whispers to Larkin.
Oh, so just be Nexus with a deeper voice. I can do that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, if I do this, I want you to feed me prunes. It's been a while.
Prunes.
I need to flesh the
Cinder, if-
system.
Cinder, if this works, we'll probably have a lot. Like, you know, you get to live. So.
So, Cinder, what are you doing then?
I guess I'll do it. Although, why she thinks I want to live after jumping out of a window. But you
5
know
minutes
what?
ago you were like, so
You gotta let me die. You'll trip, and I was like, I don't want to live.
I just want to make you feel
I
bad.
didn't
I
know.
don't actually live.
Fine. You got a picture?
Yeah. Here's a picture of
No.
next stuff.
Does Nexus have a picture of his
A
father?
picture of his father. And
met him.
Because
backcrafted
in
No.
character,
He's like,
I'll
no.
be a sloppy representation.
You've met him though.
Once.
That's true.
Yeah, but you've got a very heavy impression of him.
I have a better idea. What if I disguise myself as Nexus and go in and beat the crap out of that rude lady and run out, and then she'll go and get the authorities to hunt him down, and we can walk right in.
You want a picture of my dad? We just need to look for council pamphlets. It's not difficult. Here. And he walks over to a stall, like a vendor stall on the road. You see them exchanging with him, and he brings out, is like, here, and it's like a vote for poster.
You touch that.
Dad.
You could be contagious.
Stopping the party doing daft stuff.
It's
Fine.
That's
vote NCAB bracket, yeah.
I'll
Do you
give
have
this a
time
whirl.
for Ben Davin?
Let me just find my slot here. See if I have a... Oh, I got to use an actual spell slot for this? Now I'm really mad.
You don't seem to mind when you want to be a pregnant dragonborn, so hurry up.
Oh, actually, no, I don't. I forgot I accidentally clicked it.
Yeah, because it's been a long rest. You haven't done it yet.
Oh, yes, that's a long
Okay. Focus. Remind me what he looked like.
You've got a picture in front of you.
She, like, Nix holds up the pamphlet.
Oh. Him. So I will focus. My face will start elongating. My eyeball will fall out, and I'll pick it up and stuff it in my pocket. My ears will get, well, my ears are already weird looking, but my eyes fill, my empty eye slot fills in, I guess, and they're yellow, kind of like my pustules, and I get these little squiggly whiskery things on my chin and a black nose, and I feel it, and it's wet, so I know I'm not sick. My neck stretches and grows scales, and the only thing wrong is I also grow a tail.
He looks pretty much like him. Oh, I'm getting shivers just looking. Alright, let's go.
My tail's better than Nex's.
And again, we walk into the library, and the lady says, "Welcome to Counselor. What can I do?"
I heard you were rude to my friends.
I apologize, Counselor. Who would you be speaking of?
You don't need to say friends, you can say son and guests.
And my...
She
And
looks at the rest of you. She didn't
And
My
my son.
of the rest of you.
my
She looks at-
disappointing son over there.
Oh, I didn't realize they were your family and your guests. My deepest apologies.
I don't know if I should accept. Nix elbows me in the shin. Okay, fine, I accept. This young lady should get anything she ever asks for. And
On council business, my sincere.
Lorcan here is a good young man. You should always give him what he wants.
But no. Sounds no.
And that poor sickly fellow. When you see him next, I expect you to make restitution to him
I will, Counselor.
and give him anything he wants, even if it's a date.
Nix nudges him
He means the
again.
fruit.
He's going on a
He means the
tangent.
fruit.
And
Yes, of course.
my son there, well, feel free to throw him out. He never amounted to anything anyways.
Nix is like,
Very accurate.
Nix whispers. She goes, a little too accurate. You can stop now.
Oh. I mean, yes, of course. So we're going to go into the restricted area now. So please, drop your illusion magic that you say they couldn't cast magic, but you did. And disable any traps or anything else over there. Do you understand me, miss? I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
No, Counselor, of course. I shall guide you myself through the restrictions. Counselor, you know that there is...
What?
It is quite dangerous to go... Counselor, you know that it is quite dangerous to go into the restricted section. I would highly advise against you getting there yourself.
Are you questioning me?
Not at all, Counselor.
I suggest you disable anything that's dangerous then.
Counselor, the Guardian cannot be disabled. And I don't... Well, but I'm sure as a counselor you'd be able to speak to them. One second. And you see she walks over to where you saw the entrance and clicks on a lever that you didn't realize was there next.
Miss, just so I can protect the counselor properly, what is down there?
What?
The Guardian.
Yeah, what Guardian?
The Guardian of the Restricted Section. Is that a golem? A suit of armor? I've never been down there myself.
I am not allowed, so I wouldn't know.
Oh, I see. Thank you,
Please,
sir.
Counselor, take care. I hope you find everything you're looking for. Will she wave you guys through?
Okay. The Guardian? Nix?
So she goes, I'm glad I didn't have enough time to go down there.
You know, I think that sickly man would enjoy this, so I'm going to go get him. But you give them everything they ask for.
She goes, no, Counselor, we can get...
No,
he is
Counselor,
having...
Let's go down first.
Our sickly friend, he's drinking his sorrows away, remember? He can go talk to him later. We need to go
Under
down
his breath.
to
Nix,
the
you
vault."
know I don't drink.
And she goes, stop making a scene.
Do you guys walk through?
Yes, we walk through.
Infinitely feel better for Nick's not going down that by himself.
Me
But it's
too.
The Guardian, eh?
Guys, you can put yourselves here, please.
Is that what that ugly thing is on the...
I didn't see the... Okay.
Is that a lion?
Ooh. I know what that is.
Where
I
are we
thought that
putting
one was
ourselves
better.
on the map?
Yeah.
No, I'm not listening so long, I can't remember how to...
Me like. There we go. Tiny.
Alright. You guys in Nexus. Oh, this is an NPC.
Yeah.
Nexus! There he is. Alright. Nexus comes in with you guys. And it's in disarray.
Damn, it really
But-
is.
In the center, there is a pedestal with all around it bookshelves of books, and on top of the pedestal is a what looks like almost a statue
Oh, no.
looking at you. Its eyes,
What on earth happened down here? How is it so run down?
its eyes glowing.
Can Nick slope study it?
Sure.
Oh, my gosh.
What's that?
Minimum safe distance. Just making that clear. Just not walking up. She's just getting as close as she can to get a good look at like details of it. That's all. So investigation, Arcana.
It is following you.
The eyes are following. That's cool. She will follow the. She's just not looking away. Arcana investigation. Should know what's happening here.
I'll walk in the opposite direction to see if the other eye follows me.
Every time someone moves, it follows them.
Can
Creepy.
Nick's like do like a check to see what this is like? Investigation, Arcana.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you that kind of or history.
I would gladly do history.
You could do history or you could do history or nature.
Can I not see further things about it as well?
That's what I mean. History and
Oh.
open for you. Whatever you prefer.
Oh, okay.
And I'm
History.
going to
I got an
guide
18
myself.
history.
And this.
Can Nyx guide herself? She can, right? I'm not gonna explode. Just no magic.
You can attempt to, you can
No
certainly
magic.
try.
Okay, no magic. She's not. Okay, the DM says you can attempt to. The Nyx is not doing it. That's
You
Yeah.
can
gonna be.
certainly try.
No.
I got
fine.
an-
It's an 18.
Yeah, I got an 18 as well. I'm wondering if I know what this thing is.
You both have read about this.
I haven't. I got a 2.
This is a sphinx. Type of sphinx. You know they are powerful magical guardians.
You know how to get past the Sphinx? Alright.
You know that you don't get past the sphinx. It tests you, and if you pass, then you can do what you wish. Otherwise,
Oh.
and it seems to be carefully assessed.
Adrian, investigate, and I'll throw Adrian.
She's like Nyx is holding up her hand.
Too late. She's flying through the air now.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
no.
doesn't seem to be paying any attention to it.
So I walk a couple of paces forwards.
Now let me. This is
Then you,
this kind of guardian.
If you want to go forward, be my guest.
I mean, why
There's-
are we all waiting here? Why don't we just say hello?
I think it's looking at you already.
Next
This
is, why don't
kinda
you
guy-
go up there and investigate? Look at, is that a gem I see in its eyes? A ruby?
Let-
Shh, Nix. And I'll kick her. Go, Nexus, it's okay. I mean, obey your father.
Is Nexus going up then or not?
Nexus steps forward. Excuse me. And as soon as he goes to pass this
Pass?
bookshelf,
Oh yeah.
it moves its head, and Nexus freezes in place.
Oh. Does it say anything?
And he pops. You don't see him anymore.
Nexus disappears.
And you
Finally! Well, I for one am quite satisfied with the result of this trip. I'm ready to go.
No.
Nyx looks at Sindar. She goes, no, we're not. And he didn't have to kick me. And she kicks him
Ow!
in the shin.
Nix, where did he go?
I don't know. She walked forward to where he was.
Why do we care?
Is the Sphinx still looking where Nexus was standing?
No,
Or is it like,
at you.
Do you go to exactly where he was?
she will go towards, or she doesn't know what Nexus happened to Nexus, so she'll walk forward and she goes, oh, guardian of the restricted section, which is exactly what it is called. She goes, we don't mean harm. We are ready to pass your tests if that is what we need to access the catalog down here.
And can I have my rat back? I mean,
And can he have his rat back? She rolls her eyes.
He may have it back if you succeed on the test.
What is the test?
Only counselors are allowed to cross without being asked for the test. I see you try to deceive me. I don't appreciate it.
Well, no, he tries to deceive.
She goes, we did not try and deceive you. Like, we had, this is why I have come forward to take the test true.
Very well, but your insolent friend will be held in case you fail.
you could
And
keep
as
him.
it looks towards the back of the room here. You see this giant hourglass appear.
Oh, great.
And Nexus is inside at the bottom. And Sam's at the bottom.
Oh,
Hi,
great.
son.
She goes, he knows you're not the counselor. Stop it.
Oh. Oh, thank heavens. And I dropped this guy's cell phone. Oh.
To prove your worth.
All of us.
And all of you feel magic. And you feel the horrible sensation of being distorted and stretched and shrunk. And suddenly you're back to normal selves.
Huh.
Each of you know where you are. You hear a booming voice in your mind. Find each other. Find.
I only see two of us on the map.
Yeah.
You're supposed to only see yourself.
Oh,
How do you see
I see her. I see Nyx.
I
Because
see
you
Nyx
have
and Cinder.
access- You have access to her. That is upsetting.
Oh, actually, I'm looking at the wrong map. Okay, wrong computer. Okay, I only see myself on
Okay,
my.
then 1 second. I need to make sure that you guys don't all have access to her because you're not supposed to see each other.
Well,
Sorry.
the character map or the overlay map has to.
Yeah, the overlay can.
That's what
you-
I was looking at when I said
I'm
I
not
saw it.
supposed to. What?
Nice to change it.
Alright, yeah, you should read
Yeah. Yeah, nice.
Alright, so each of you, we're going to do this turn-based.
Okay.
So everybody roll initiative. There is no fighting. This is just for
And
the
Fun.
purposes of doing it turn by turn and making it fair. You also hear in your mind, you have 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes in rounds. Okay? So
That's a long time.
that's a long time.
Oh, I forgot to select my character when I rolled.
What'd you roll?
Got me a 20.
Alright.
nice. I hand rolled a 17.
Interesting.
Alright.
So we just have to run through this place.
You have to find each other and the exits. Alright. Lorcan, you start.
How much movement do I have again? It's 30 feet, isn't it?
You can dash.
There's a doorway here, isn't there?
There is an exit, yes. Actually, no. You look around and all you see is walls. You need an investigation check.
That one second.
There is a deafening silence.
Investigation.
Mm-hmm.
I got a 19.
Yeah,
Straight.
you notice that there's a part of the wall that doesn't look quite right.
Ooh. I'll go over to it.
Just here. As you go to touch it,
3.
3, so that's 15, yeah?
Yeah.
As you go to touch it, there's nothing there.
Oh,
Walk
so I
out.
go through that then.
Yes. That's
Oh.
20 feet and you can dash. But you have to choose a direction.
I'll go right.
Right, go.
5, 6. That's 30. 1, 2, 3. That's the dash.
Alright. That's your turn. Next.
Okay. So Nyx looks around and she's a bag of emotions as one, she's afraid for Nexus, but there's the part of her that curiosity, that spark that she's like, this is amazing. This is fantastic. She looks around. Can she distinct is each way that she looks is it exactly the same as any features that would give it away? Can she do like an investigation check to like see which way could be the right way to go in this
The
like
only
maze?
difference you see right now is that some paths, just like the one in front of you, have torches and light, and others don't. You don't see any of the difference. Everything looks the same.
She'll draw closer to the lit passage.
Okay.
And she'll keep an eye out for anything.
Again, just count your movement.
So only move 5, I believe.
10.
10. And she looks down the corridor. What does she see?
Just a corridor, just a stone corridor. Ceiling to floor with a light and stairs going down to it. You're kind of in a little raised platform.
Stairs leading up or down?
Down.
Down.
So the stairs in front of you lead down to the corridor. You're in a bit of a lifted platform.
Okay. Can she try and discern if there's any like illusionary magic at work here? Like looking down the corridor?
You can even Arcana check, but that's your check for the round.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So doing Arcana. Terrible.
So that's 5 minutes.
It's 10 rounds per minute.
50 rounds.
I'm giving you a lot, a big
Yeah.
chance here.
No, that's a lot, yeah. That's fine.
5 minutes is 5 minutes is a long time, but it's not. So you gotta be quick still.
Okay. What's it, 14?
Here's the problem, though. You won't keep lit what you've already been to.
I
So
know.
this is actually like, if you go through a place and you're like, have I been here? You don't know. It's a probable
14. It's probably
Or
average.
you don't sense any magic. You sense that you're in a different plane. You felt that teleportation. But you don't sense any magic.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, she'll cautiously make her way down the corridor. She'll dash to the end of the corridor.
Alright, so
You know, it's another, 45. Yeah.
so that would put you at 45. That means you still have power.
And when she gets to that corner, she'll look down that part of around the corner, down that corridor.
I can see his markers, when he's stretching the
Yeah,
distance.
that was me, not.
Oh,
That was her, not me. Yeah. What does she see looking down the corridor? Just another corridor.
Just another corridor.
Okay. That's where
If
she'll
there's
stay, I
something
guess.
you see, I will point it out.
Okay.
Cinder, you don't have that.
what?
Just find the
Find the path.
You don't have that.
Okay.
Next, how much more movement do you have?
I have 30 feet normally.
No, Nix.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh no, she's only got 30, so that's as far as she can go, I believe.
You can dash.
I did. Oh wait, so I only walked 10. That is what? 20. Right, yeah. I can go a little further. Sure.
You've got 30 movement, so you can get 60 feet. Means you can go another 20 feet from where you are.
Yeah, sure.
So 50
Oh, I
feet.
can't see. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
10 feet
Okay.
more.
I thought you said 15. Alright, sure.
You walked 5 feet again.
I heard 15 feet.
Ramon, you were here.
Yeah. Okay. 10 feet,
Five.
yeah, I got it.
Man,
That's
thank you.
Yeah, I got it.
Focus, please. Alright. That's Cinder.
Where's Cinder?
Cinder is going to come to here
Mm-hmm.
and down to here.
You don't have dark vision.
No.
So
Okay.
I need you to give me, first of all, an investigation check.
Let me see if I have anything to make light.
You have torches on the wall in this chamber.
Oh, so I don't need dark vision. Oh, I'll grab a torch.
Alright, and then I'll give you 15 feet of light, basically. So I need you to give me an investigation.
Why's it gotta be investigation?
11. Okay. As far as you know, you're in a closed room. To your left, you have a chest, a large chest. And to your right, you have a table with, looks like all kinds of cool stuff.
Oh.
I will open the chest.
As you open the chest, it seems to be empty.
Can you speak a little louder?
As you open the chest, it seems to be empty.
Can I feel around in it to see if there's anything
Yeah.
like a false bottom or...
Okay. As you try to feel around in it, give me a dexterity saving throw.
Ah, crap.
You fail, so you suddenly get sucked into it.
Are you serious?
Yes?
It's a mimic, isn't it?
No, wait. You get sucked into it with your torch, and you reappear. You hit a bottom, and as you push it, suddenly you feel like it's above you, and you come out there.
Ooh. Did I accidentally find the way out?
Yes. Very accidentally.
All the parts are here. Okay. Well,
Yes. You only use 5 feet of your movement, so you can you still got the rest of your movement and a dash action.
Is that able to come back in, or...?
Yeah.
Ah.
quick question. Can a basilisk see in the dark?
We've established this, it didn't give you that good.
Okay.
No.
But remembering my basilisk eye, I will take it and I will put it back in my eye socket because I'm no longer in disguise, and I will put on my eye patch. And I will go north 5, 10. I have a total of 15, or I can go the whole.
No, you only use 5, so you have 25 more.
20, 25, the Eddie.
Yep, and you can dash as well. The other action.
Okay. 5, 10, 15. 20, 25 dead end.
Put 25 dead end. Nice.
By the way, if I step on Raisin Bran, does that make me a serial killer?
Well, it's different.
What did he actually say for the first step on what?
Raisin Bran. If I step on
Oh.
Raisin Bran, doesn't make me a serial killer.
Alright, so you've got 5 more feet of movement if you want to go backwards on it, so.
Can I investigate the wall?
You can.
Mm.
But it'll be next turn. You already did your.
Okay, then I'll just go back 5 feet.
Alright. And with that, the first round done. Before we get to Larkin, we'll have our quick break. It'll be 5 minutes. So bear with us, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be about
5 minutes.
5 minutes, and we'll be back and see how they fare in finding each other in this labyrinth and finding the exit. Welcome back. We are D&D Play 2020 playing the homebrew campaign Legends of Methis, and we're back. If you were with us before, if you were not with us before, we these 3 misfits broke into the restricted section of the library by pretending, one of them pretending to be a counselor.
We didn't break in, they let us in.
And they met the Sphinx that, with their true sight, saw right through them and put them to the test. If they are worthy of the information they keep. And they were dropped in different points of a labyrinth where they have to find each other and the exit within a certain time frame, or their friend gets dropped in sand because it was logged in an hourglass. So we're back at the top of the round. Larkin.
Yes. Larkin will be moving down where he was going normally.
Way on down.
Go on.
4. Is this another hidden wall bit?
Hmm?
This bit.
No. You don't have any more hidden walls.
8.
8 is 40. You have 20 more feet.
I'm gonna go down as well.
You okay? Where are you to?
Actually, no, I'll go to the corner to see what's there.
So you go down, you're going to the corner?
Yeah. That's another 15. No.
Yeah. 15. And you see where you came out.
Yeah, there's nothing
This
there.
is where you came out.
Yeah, I know. There's nothing there.
No?
Perfect.
So you have 5 more feet?
I'll come back this way though.
Alright. Next.
Alright. So next is gonna grab her like little goggles and she's gonna put them over her eyes and she's gonna go, Dylan, guide the way. And they're gonna glow like an amethyst color, so she's gonna cast Detect Magic, just like projecting out of the goggles. So she's gonna do that. And then what does she see ahead of her when she does that?
Nothing shines with magic.
Okay, that's fine. She'll keep going the way she'll keep going the way she was going then.
So you won't be able to dash, so.
No, that's fine.
So move 5 feet at a time, please. Yeah.
Oh, okay, my bad. Yeah. Yeah.
5, 10,
Oop.
15, 20.
Yeah.
25.
Oh, there's a corridor here. What is she like? Am I tripping here? Is that like a dead end or is that more
That's a dead
corridor?
end.
Dead end? Okay. So she go that way. And I believe I got 5 more feet.
No, that's it.
That's it? Nah, yeah, that's it, because I backtracked. Yeah. Does she see?
Alright.
Not, she doesn't see anything. Alright, that's her turn.
No magic is shining. Cinder! Where are you going?
I guess I'm going back the way I came.
Yeah? 5?
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30,
Yeah.
35, 40,
Mhm.
45, 50.
So that's 45.
Okay.
You can move diagonally as well.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay. Is there...
So you can go this way, this way. So you can go down or left.
Hmm.
You've only got, I believe, 15 more.
I don't know which way to go. Okay. I'll go to the left. Because I'm left-handed. So that's 45.
Yeah, and then 50. Sorry, no, that would be 50, then 55, 60.
60.
You have 10 more. No, one more.
One more?
Alright. Round 2 is being
A bit slow.
Larkin.
Yes, I'm going through this area. 1, 2, 3, and I'm in.
Alright, so that's 15. Where you go now?
It's a good question.
You see a torch to your right. Left.
Yeah, yes. I will run down that way.
Alright.
15,
So 15,
30
30 to the torch,
to the
yeah.
corner. And it goes nowhere except round the corner. So that's fine. I will go down, and since it's the same sort of area, I will run down the other way. 1, 2,
So you've got 30 more feet.
3, yes. Oh, it doesn't go that way. 4, 5, 6. Gosh darn it.
Alright.
Ping where you're at, Jonathan.
No, that's not how it works. Next.
Alright, so next is like, alright, I got something for this. And she's going to reach into her bag and she's going to pull out a flask of what looks like liquid mercury. And she's going to, as a bonus action, drink her potion of swiftness, which she made. It gives her an additional 10 feet of movement. So she's going to down that one. And she's going to move down the corridor.
Okay. So that means that with a dash, you
No,
have
It's an action stream.
40, so 80.
oh,
80 with a
you
dash.
have 80 feet. Alright.
nice.
5. Corridor. Okay. What? Turn, yep. So she's just gonna dash. Unless something catches her eye, she'll keep going.
15,
20.
20,
Zoom out.
25,
25,
30.
30,
Is this a dead end here?
35.
Yeah, it looks like a dead end.
And then,
It's a
yes.
wall. Yeah. 30. 35. 40. 50.
I'm gonna cheat and look at the Twitch page.
40, 45, 50.
50. Crossroads.
30, crossroads.
Nothing
So you
jumps
see
out of.
around that wall, so there's a passage here, and there's that and that.
What and what?
Decisions. Alright. Peeks down this corridor. If she's got no other inclination, she'll probably go down as far as 50, 55,
You have 30 feet.
60. I have 30 feet left. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that would have been you
That was
5,
10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got 20 more.
Yeah.
That's it.
20 more.
And you have 10 more.
I've not found a dead end yet. That's quite fun.
She's just
So we
dead
have
end.
5
All right. So
more.
sorry, no, I didn't go forward. If there was a dead end, I didn't hear that. So she'll go back up to where she was. So it should be
So 10 more.
yeah. 10 more. There.
Okay.
Speaking of dead end, what did Pink Panther say when he stepped on an ant?
What? Pardon?
What
Dead
did
end.
Pink Panther
Dead
say?
ant. Dead ant. Dead ant.
Dead
Dead
ant,
ant.
dead
Dead
ant,
ant.
dead
Dead ant.
Cinder, where you go?
Oh my gosh. Well, I was moving left, so I guess I'm moving left. Too much pressure for me. I'm horrible at tests. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. Ooh, a turn.
Alright.
That's as far as I can go, I think. So
It is. Let's go. Larkin.
Larkin. Okay.
why is she grinning like I missed something?
You did it! You're doing great! I was laughing because you got to a really long straight.
3, 15. I'm gonna go to this corner to look around it.
Okay.
15, 16, 25.
Yeah?
Oh, why is it bent like that?
Like what?
Okay, so what you see is the normal walls you see here is a hatch door.
The hatch door? Can I open it?
You can go to it.
I saw her ping.
Wait, what? How many was that? Was that 25
So
movement?
25, yes.
Oh, I need to dash to get there.
Yeah, but you opening it, I will allow you.
Okay. 30, 35, 40.
Hey, are you gonna open it? You gonna step through?
I will open it and I will look into it.
It's dark. You can't see it.
Even with dark.
Dark and full of terrors.
Yes.
Does it go down?
It feels like you could step on it, but you don't know where it will lead you.
I will step on it.
Alright.
Famous last words. I will step
If
on
you
it.
Step on it. Roll me a d100.
What?
Okay.
64, 64, 64, 64.
Let me look.
Where am I getting teleported to?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna check. That's 25.
Is Nexus in this too?
No, he's in an hourglass.
Oh, that's right.
Where the hell am I?
Up.
Why am I up? I don't want to be up.
Jonathan, I think
Damn
you
it.
need to get up and go give your woman a hug and accidentally see her scream.
This is a very long path up here.
Yes, it is. Do you want to go back the way you came, or do you want to continue along this path?
I think I'll continue. For now.
Okay, which way?
Much movement do I have? 20?
You have
10. 20, yeah. Well, I can't see an exit anywhere up here except this corner.
It's a corner.
I know it's a corner, so I said it's a corner.
Joseph's like, that messed me up. You can go back to where you were, but that would be all your movement.
What, 20 feet to get back there?
No, so like you would go back and then you'd have only like 10 more feet.
Okay, I'll go back.
Yeah, John's like, yeah, no. I'd rather know where I was.
I should have been using graph paper to map this out. Darn it.
Jonathan is trying to.
What do you mean?
I can see you writing it. Alright, you got 10 more feet.
I will go upwards
Okay.
to this point.
Alright.
So,
So
Two
you
dead
can
ends.
see 2 dead ends.
perfect. That means I'm at the edge.
And you have 5 more feet.
Five more feet.
Mm-hmm.
I've only got 2. That hatch, is there anything behind it?
You can continue past it. Yeah.
Okay. I'll let it come back then.
Alright. Next.
Okay. Step back out into the corridor. You said there was something over here? I don't see anything. Was Nick's just tripping?
I didn't say there was anything with it.
I thought you did, but that's why I'm asking. So nah, gotcha. So she goes back to the crossroads.
Crossroads, perfect.
I know, right? It's fun.
So you use 5.
Looks.
There is a bit of rubble here and here,
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
but you don't. Other than that, you don't see anything. Actually, ping what's the furthest you can see to your left.
To the left. I can see. It's hard to tell what that is.
Okay. So
Looks like rubble too.
it's
I'm not
not.
sure.
There's something
No.
there that you can see, but you're not sure what it is yet. You're too far.
So if it catches her attention, she will go at least 30 feet in that direction. Yeah.
You move 35 out of 80, and you see a hatch. Not the hatch though.
Ooh, an underground tunnel to get through this thing.
Okay. So yeah. So she'll go another 20 feet. Yeah.
You'll
So
be 60 feet. You'll have 20 feet by the time you get to it.
yeah. So she gets to the hatch. Yeah. So she'll
Do
hurry
you
along.
open it and go through?
Anything about this hatch that she should be careful of?
Judging
Should
by
roll
her
investigation?
evil
you don't
grin.
notice- you don't notice any magic with your detect magic, and you
Passive investigation.
It's
Doesn't
dark.
just looks like a hatch. It's dark. Okay. She'll open the hatch. Sure.
Yeah, it's magical darkness.
Magical
But
darkness.
she didn't sense magic.
No, not on the hatch when she
Oh,
opens
When she opens it, it just flares.
it's
The magical
magical.
darkness.
it. Magical.
Yeah. Yeah. So she opens it. She goes. Nexus. And she's just going to. Is there a ladder, or is it just like a leap of faith from the
It's
top
A
of
leap
that?
of faith.
Yeah. So again, she's like, Nexus, you owe me. She's gonna jump in.
You need to 100.
Really?
40 left. So,
Ooh, okay.
94. Not sure if a high roll's good or not.
Alright.
apparently,
So, next you step through.
next to me.
Mm.
Yes.
I Goomba stomp Lorcan. Boop.
You pop out.
Ah!
She goes, she's just back. Oh, it's.
Don't scare me
she's
like that!
She was ready to like, activate her defenses. She goes, oh, Lorcan, it's just you. Oh, God. Alright.
What's
She goes,
just me? Why
If
is
you have not
everyone
noticed, when it-
pop up in front of me?
She goes, I'm not in charge of this interdimensional labyrinth. I opened the hatch and here I am. You haven't seen Cinder then?
Does that mean you came from the corridor?
I went down a hatch. Full of
I
magical
went down
darkness.
the hatch, but I didn't see you.
Did I hear her scream when she
No.
went, ah?
No.
Yeah, she almost threw a flask of acid in Lorcan's eyes. She was that startled.
Jesus! I think I should get my shield out, Christ.
Yeah, she was like ready.
You have 20 more feet of movement.
Well, I've been. These are both dead ends next to me. I've not been the other way past that hatch.
Ping it? Which other way?
Yes, this way. He's not being this way.
Okay. Alright, so she'll... You see that she's like, just like moving a little faster than usual. And she'll go in that direction to check it out.
Your extra 20 people get you to the corner.
Alright, she looks around the corridor. That's
Just the
it.
corridor.
Alright.
You have to fully get into the corner to see the rest. You have 5 more feet.
Alright. That's true, too. She was just being cautious. Alright, boom.
So,
Looks down the corridor.
dead end. Path.
There's a dead end, and then there's 2 paths to...
Which way are the paths?
To the right.
To her right. Yeah.
Wait. That way.
Yes.
Yeah, she's like, so she like
One at
is
the
like
bottom
this.
and one where?
One
No, the
halfway
dead end.
through, one
There's a
up.
dead end at the end, and then there's on the side there's a path on the right.
Okay.
Alright. Cinder!
Yeah.
Forrest, your turn. Where are you going?
Oh, I'm.
We just need to find Cinder.
The first thing I want to do is yell, "Hello!"
Hello.
Yeah. All you hear is that.
Okay, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Should I be checking for secret doors?
No, leave that. You're fine. When there is something to investigate, I will give you a free investigation.
35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. That's it for me. I have no clue where I am. I can only see a few, 20 feet, 15 feet? Something like that, so.
Exactly. Larkin. Let's do it.
Next.
Hmm.
Are you gonna go that way?
Yeah, I suggest we stick together. We don't want to lose each other again.
Oh, I was gonna
Oh.
go back this way.
She goes, you can, but there's no guarantee we'll find each other again. We should stick together.
Fair. Yeah, I'm gonna go. And 20.
Yeah, so she'll point out the paths as he comes into.
You can move diagonal, so that's 25.
Oh, 25, 35, 45, 55, 60.
Alright.
Next.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big area down here.
Alright, I'll be there in a minute.
Okay.
So she goes that way. Well, this is a minute, isn't it?
That's difficult to map.
Shoo. So that was what,
This is
5,
what I like
5,
about this map. It's not as straightforward. How much was that?
35, I believe, unless I'm miscounting.
It's been 3 rounds, right?
It's been 5 rounds.
What?
Hmm.
We need a round counter.
Sure, I will put one in. How do I do that?
No, that's okay. I'm just teasing. I always fail these tests, so.
20.
Fine.
That'd be 65. 55 down here. Okay.
Can
She
you see
moves a
more
little
down
further
there?
down. Yeah, so is this a dead end or is this like, is that a corner to her right?
That's a corner.
Okay, so there's a corner on this side, and then which way do you want to go first?
What's that big space?
No, is it just like an expanse that just leads off into the darkness? Should peek around the corner.
You have how much dark vision? 60 feet?
60 feet, yeah.
Yeah, you're showing 30.
Yeah, you're
But I
showing-
can't see further. Yeah.
Is it showing 30 or is it showing 60?
It's not 60, I can only see.
Yeah, why is it not showing?
I only see 30. Yeah.
Yeah, why? I don't get that.
I see 60.
Yeah, why? I've clicked, your vision says 60 feet.
It might be because it's a corner. Let me just move myself. Maybe it's obstructing my line of sight.
Yeah, move. Oh, wait,
Yeah,
sorry.
it is. It is because of that. Alright, gotcha. So that's what the bit there. That's
So
not
this is
English
the
either.
corner.
Mhm.
and this
That's
is
the corner. Yeah.
Corner where?
On the right here.
No, the one at the bottom. I see that one.
Hmm.
You can see it.
Oh yeah. So
No, I can't. I can't reach
Oh,
it.
you can't.
It's
Good.
5 foot
you
too far.
can't. She'll describe. She goes, yeah. It seems to keep going further down, and then is this a corner as well? By the looks
Is
of
that
it.
where the path ended up
Yes,
earlier?
that's the corner. And you see a net, you know, one of those nets where you can lay down, like is attached to 2 poles.
Hmm.
So you see one of those nets sprawled on the floor, and you see a table with clothes.
She goes, there's a net and there's clothes? She's confused, but clothes in the labyrinth? Like, what is this? She points it out to him.
Clothes? Whereabouts is that?
She points to her right here.
How much more movement do you have?
So that was 65.
Oh, you
So
have 15 more.
You can get that.
15 more.
Yeah, and I'll give you.
She
Okay.
does the net look like a trap?
No, I
It's
told
separate.
you one of those like nets.
Is
that
it
you
suspended?
hang to sleep. Yeah.
A hammock.
It's not. It's
Okay,
on the
like a
floor.
hammock.
It's not suspended.
Has it
Yeah,
hammock style then?
hammock
Gotcha.
style, but it's on the floor.
Alright, I wasn't sure. Alright, all good
Oh.
then. So she's going to go towards look at the clothes. So she's gonna
Move yourself there.
Alright. Is it which one? Was it this is the table, right? The
Yeah.
clothes?
So
I gotcha.
give me an investigation.
She'll guide herself. I believe it's fine in the labyrinth of doom. We'll see. Maybe she explodes. 18. Her goggles will shine, so that's another like a D4. Not that
You
I don't
can't
need
guide
it.
yourself during initiative.
Oh, I can't guide myself. That's right. It's an action. I don't need it. To be fair, I don't think so anyway. So that's a natural 18 or 26.
Don't need
You
it.
look at these clothes, clearly massive, probably dragonborn clothes, and you rummage through and there's a note. And when you look at the note, it says, the exit you think of will always be the right one.
Sorry, she needs to write this down. I just pulled it. The exit.
You think of may not always be the right one.
Well, that's not cryptic.
Typical Sphinx. Be the right one. May not be always the right one, right?
Yeah.
Alright. She goes, I found a letter. I think that's all she can do. It's been like
Yeah.
her turn.
You
It's
have
6
10
seconds.
more feet of movement. Sorry,
Okay.
5 more feet of movement.
She would. She will stay where she is because she doesn't know which way we're gonna go. It's up to Lorcan.
Cinder. Your turn.
Okay. 5, 10. I can see 5, 10, 15, 20. I see redness to the right down there.
Yeah, you can see a torch down here. Yes.
I'm gonna stick with lefties.
Alright.
15, 20, 25, 30,
It's the same torch that you saw from above.
35, 40.
Okay. So now you have a path this way and you have a path this way.
Lefties again.
Alright.
What was I up to? 40?
40.
45, 50, 55, 60.
Alright.
What is that grin for? Okay, next turn I'm going a different direction.
I just like how it's
Psych
going.
him out.
Right. I'll go this way.
Alright. Larkin, move then.
1, 2.
Move 5 feet at a time just in case. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, I moved my screen. Does that work?
Yeah. You're at a dead end.
Yeah, dead end.
9.
Okay.
Just like fuck's sake.
Crosses out.
9. Wait, how many?
8.
How many did I have?
8
12.
out of 12. 8.
No, 10.
9.
Oh, 5, 9, 10.
10. 11. 12, you can go diagonally
Oh,
to next to it.
Yeah, you can go diagonal.
damn, it's big in here.
So yeah, you see the same thing. You see clothes that Nix is rummaged through on the table, and you see the hammer on the floor.
Well,
You see, she's holding a letter in her hand.
nice letter.
Holds it out for him. The DM allows it.
Yeah?
The exit you think of may not always be the right one. Well, I think of a way out of here would be the right exit. But if that's not the right one, then do we have to stay here? I don't get it.
Well, you don't know.
Anyway.
Alright, Nix.
Let's see. Alright, so next it goes, which way? Should we go try that way or that way?
Well, I'm not the best choice. I found a dead end.
Okay. She's gonna go to the left. Alright, so she's gonna go 30 that way.
30, which one is that? Okay.
To the left, yeah. Is it a dead end? Looks dead end,
No.
dead endish.
Yeah.
No?
No, not yet.
No, it's not.
Not yet. Soon. It's coming. Alright, so
30.
yeah, she'll go.
40, you see a latch.
A latched door.
She goes, there's a latch over here.
There's a hatch door again.
Oh, a hatched door.
A hatch with a latch. It's got a latch.
35 feet.
You're gonna try and go through it.
I'm gonna check it out, yeah, but I'm not gonna go through it until you catch up. She's going to.
Okay. Is there anything
She's gonna-
behind it?
You were holding your action to dash, that's fine. Huh?
Is there anything behind it?
There's
Does it look like?
Dead end.
a dead end here, but that's all you can see from where you are. Are you
Okay,
gonna
so
approach
she'll
the
wait.
hatch-
She'll
the
wait
hatch
for him.
door?
Hmm.
You gonna approach the hatch
This-
door or not? You have 5 more feet of movement.
Yeah, she'll approach just to get a closer look because of what he asked. Sure.
So you can see that this is a corner, so there's something past it.
There might be. She's kind of trying to like. There might be a little something around the corner.
Yeah, I'm coming.
She goes, I'll wait for you.
Okay, so you're holding your action to dash when Larkin gets there.
When he.
Cinder!
Yeah.
Should I metagame and go the other way because of her evil smile?
I'm just enjoying.
It's not
seeing
metagaming.
you guys squirm. Go for it.
I'm scared to move right now.
I told you this is not combat.
It don't matter. I fail every test.
Let's say that.
5, 10, 15, 20.
You see a hatch door.
Can I knock on it and see if it sounds hollow on the other side?
Knock, knock. Who's there?
You knock on it, and it,
Does it like sound solid? Like, I don't know. Any traps on it? Anything?
you can use your free investigation on it for sure.
Nat 20.
Ooh. You remember that the last time you went through a hatch door, it got you out of a room. So you think this might lead you somewhere.
And there were no traps?
No traps.
Okay, I'll open it and I forget what number I was up to.
You were on 20.
25,
So,
30.
okay, so as you do you step over it
Yes.
or you put in it?
Well, now I'm going back the other way.
No, when you did the investigation, you knew that if you, you realized that the last time you came out of a hatch door that led somewhere else, so you know this is probably going to take you somewhere else.
Oh.
The hatch door.
Like
There
a
were no
teleport?
traps. Like a teleport.
Oh. Well, I stepped through it, so.
Okay, so if you step through it, roll me D100.
Ooh.
72. Let me zoom out so I can see where you moved me to.
Yeah, roll me a D12.
Oh, this is getting worse.
Okay.
12 as well.
Alright, Cinder, you appear there.
Whoa, that's a big shift. Okay.
And in front of you, you see something here. You're not quite sure what.
Oh, to the
Probably
left.
have to get closer because it's dark.
So you're saying move a little bit closer.
You
okay.
have 10 more feet of movement.
10?
5, sorry.
I got up to 30.
No, because you moved past the hatch when you did that. So if you're going to step in the hatch, you still have 5 feet.
But that, okay. 5.
So you can, okay, so you see there is a chest and a barrel behind
A
it.
chest?
I've got good luck with chests. My wife says I'm a chest man. So
you can use your action to dash, or...
oh, I do have more movement then. Okay. I'll come up to it.
Alright, so you see a chest, a barrel, and another hatch door behind the barrel.
Another hatch door?
He's just going to be teleporting all over the map.
Is opening a door a free movement?
Yeah, it's free movement. No, stepping into it would be, but opening it is a free action.
Okay. A barrel, a door, and what else?
And a chest, a barrel, and a hatch door.
I'll open
Which
the
one?
chest.
Yeah, you open the chest.
And you get eaten.
Give
No,
me, give me your. Oh no, you already did your pre-investigation. So, if you open the chest, it seems empty. At first glance.
I'll feel around in it again.
Okay, feel around. Roll me to 100.
What?
Is there any real treasure in this place? 86.
You come out.
Oh, I gotta zoom out again.
Yeah, you do.
I'm out of the map. What is that green stuff?
I was just different floor, like, color.
You're on a green floor.
Yeah.
So are we.
You still have 20 feet of movement.
Well,
The thing is, he's got 2 options. That's all.
I'm going to try something different, y'all. I'm going to the right.
Alright, so you've got 20 feet. Start walking.
5, 10,
You
15,
move diagonally, so that's 15,
20.
25, 20. Yeah. So yeah, you see this is a bigger area, but that's it.
Is that the end of my turn?
That's the end of the turn.
Okay.
I'm moving now.
Larkin, give me a perception check.
A perception check. What's my perception? My perception's 4.
What's your passive?
Yeah, that bad. 10.
Okay.
No,
Mine's 13 if that matters.
A lot better.
Okay.
Perception check.
What's your passive, Sander? Did you say?
13.
Okay. Larkin, your turn.
I do have the warm hammer of warning, but that's not maybe
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Can I have a free shout?
You can have a free shout.
Hello? Lucy, are you home?
Both of you hear this.
both of Nick's as well.
Nick's and Larkin.
Do I?
Oh!
Is that who I think it is?
Does
Did
that
you just
echo
hear
through
him?
the hall?
Yeah.
Ah! Who's there?
I'm gonna move. Do I know which direction it came from?
Give me a perception.
Oh,
Actually,
Right.
investigation is your free roll, so.
investigation is my free roll.
I have a +0 investigation.
I also have a +0 for this. I just rolled a 3 for the investigation.
You have no idea. The echo is so hard to tell where it's coming from.
Cinder,
What?
where are you?
Oh my god, this place is haunted! Who's there?
It's me, you fool.
God?
It's your father. No, I'm doing. What could I do? What
You
could I
talk
do?
like my father.
Where are you?
Right here? Where I've always been.
Tell where it's coming from still.
No, it echoes a lot.
I'm surrounded by darkness.
Try to find him.
Yeah, I'm guessing he's not forwards, so because well she's down there anyway, so I'll go backwards.
Yeah, Nyx, you saw that Nyx heard it, but she doesn't seem to be making it out as well as you are. 3,
Should I go back the other way,
4,
Father?
We hear.
6.
Ah!
Can I see him from there? Yeah.
Larkin, is that
Hey,
you?
you are, you nutter.
Shh! My dad will hear you.
What, Dad?
I heard him call out to me. This place is haunted.
Are you sure you're not hallucinating?
Well,
Now he's gonna think you're a
no, I'm not
hallucination.
sure.
Ah.
I got Dane Bramage, so it's possible.
Nyx is down here from this way.
Come here and give me a hug, big boy.
Lorcan will like pick up his hammer. No, Nix is down here, so
Nix is here too.
aye. She just popped up out of nowhere.
I've done that a few times.
You have, if you dash, you have another 32.
Where to?
That's up to you.
I don't have anywhere to dash to right now.
You have back to where you came.
True.
Go back to Nix. I'll follow.
She.
We're here.
Yeah, but where did she go down to the bottom, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I got that. That'll do.
Alright. Nix, you guys found each other by luck, but you found each other.
Alright, so
Hey,
she's got
look,
a.
it doesn't matter how we've done it, alright? We've done it.
Yeah, no, guys,
Okay.
I'm just really proud.
So she turns, she goes, it was a Tinder. She
Yeah, he's
at,
behind us.
Alright, good. Alright, so there's a, as I said, there's a latch door this way. As she's
Latches
talking-
are bad luck.
Okay, she calls out to him. She probably hears him.
Great, they're gonna disappear on me now.
There was one thing that, like, she found it odd. Like, she walked through this place. She looked at the ladder and went, and what's up with that? What's up with the net? Can she look at, like, is it just how
You
high
can
is it?
use the investigation on the net. It's on the floor.
Yeah. Alright. She will investigate the net. Like, it's like odd. Like, net? Ooh. I like that roll. It's great. The investigation plus 8. Cool. 26. Yeah.
As you investigate the net, it seems to be covering something.
Oh.
Oh.
Covered in. That's not obvious from where she is. Okay. She.
And it
Would-
doesn't
I guess
seem
you
to be
would-
trapped or anything.
Okay. Whereabouts is the net in the room?
There, it's this drawing on the
Not there? I shall get closer to it. What is it? And then she takes a closer
As
look.
you take it, it seems like there's like a hole on the floor. And there's a chest.
A
Yeah.
hole on the floor.
So imagine that someone carved a 5 foot by 5 foot hole, but if you stepped on it, you wouldn't tell the difference because the top of the
Hmm.
chest is.
Yeah. So she was like, because she was like thinking, the exit you think of might not always be always the right one. So she thought that net was out of place. She goes, "There's a chest here. It might be an alternative route. It might not be the obvious way out."
Huh.
But so we can all stick together. I have a plan. It
Well,
was
if
6
you've
seconds.
thought of it, isn't that the wrong way then?
No, I thought the right way was the latch, the way we came here, but doesn't seem like the most obvious way.
I didn't even think that was a way out.
So she goes,
Cinder, come
I know
here.
we're taking a bit long. She goes, "Come to me. I have an idea, so we all stick together in case we get split up." Right, that's her turn because she's taking up way too much time talking.
Cinder.
She holds out the bag of holding.
Why the bag of holding?
You'll see.
Oh, I'm not getting in the bag of holding again.
See how-
Oh, for God damn it. Cinder is muted.
Yes, it is muted. Cinder?
You're muted, Cinder.
You're
You'll-
muted.
I said, oops, not that way.
Ah,
35. 40. I can see you!
right, go to
Fo-
Nix.
45. Where's Nix? I can't see in this place.
Forwards.
Okay.
A little to the left. Just calls out. Follow my voice.
50.
Bahama bless you, DM.
55. 60. Oh, a net! I dated a
Yes,
girl
I have
named
it.
Annette. Oh, I see you, Nix. Hi, how are you?
It's good
Did
to see
you-
you, Cinder. This
did-
might be the way out.
Did you know you could teleport all over this place? It's really quite fascinating.
I did deduce that. Just threw on goggles.
Yeah. So what's in the net?
It's a chest.
At the moment,
A
Nick
chest?
has opened it, and you can see a chest underneath the hammock.
Well, I have had such luck with chests. They're always empty, but then when I reach in, poof! And that's how I found y'all.
You ain't got bad luck with chest.
He broke himself.
No, my wife said something.
Come on.
Yeah, I heard something, but we couldn't make it out.
She said, you ain't got bad luck with chests.
Oh.
That's what you said.
So Cinder, you still have 10 feet of movement. What do you do?
Do not touch the chest.
Don't touch it. She's holding out the bag of holding. Get in.
In the bag of holding?
She holds out her bag of holding. Yeah.
I know a monster for you guys, honey.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I don't want to get in a bag of holding, okay?
It's so we can stick together just in case.
You know I can't breathe in there, right?
You won't be in there for long.
Five, 10, and I will grab her and shove her in the bag.
You
Is
don't
that a
have an
spell?
action.
Oh, no action. Oh.
No action to shove me in the bag.
Next turn.
Yes, Lorca.
Yes?
Up to you. You're gonna go into the bag of holding.
I don't really want to go in the bag of holding either, to be fair.
Because I know, but we get teleported. If we get teleported and split up, Nexus is not gonna make it.
Should I be cheesy and say, can we all hold hands?
What if time passes differently in the bag and you teleport and 2 hours pass and we're dead?
That's not. She looks like she's so confused with the question. I don't think that would happen, but
the eyes at you to hold hands.
I'm willing to hold your hand, Nix.
she
Yeah, we can
thought
all
of
have
that.
to Cinder.
Like,
I know.
all right.
I can hold one hand, Laura can hold the other, and we can swing you.
Okay, Lorcan's had enough, and he's now picking Cinder up and shoving him into the bag. It's a strength contest now.
Cinder, roll athletics or acrobatics if you want to lose this.
Nah, I'll let him do it.
Alright.
Shove
Oh,
me in
you
the
let me
awesome
do
bag.
it. Okay.
Lorcan just picks Cinder up and throws him head first into the bag.
Ah!
No! Ooh, it's
Thank
dark
you.
in here too.
I really hate you. And I dive in.
Alright, so.
When he gets in, I'm like,
need
I
to
heard
know-
that.
I need to know your constitution modifier.
Oh no.
Our bonus or our score?
Your bonus.
+3.
+4. Hooah!
Damn, quite good.
Okay. So, Lorcan, you can hold your breath for 4 minutes, and Cinder for 5.
Hey.
Ooh, I can live longer.
Alright, Nix, what do you do?
to the chest. She goes, okay. She closes the bag. She goes, you'll be. She looks at. She goes, you'll be out in a moment. Don't panic. Try not to take breaths in there.
Can we even hear her in the bag?
No.
We're in a different dimension.
Okay, I'm gonna roll to see if I'm. Yep, I'm claustrophobic.
Oh, it's not tight in the bag. It's not tight.
No, but I'm surrounded by
It's an
darkness.
expanse.
It's an endless void. Oh yeah.
I'm trying to breathe.
Next, we'll examine the chest.
Okay, investigate the chest. Investigation.
Not as good as the last one, but that's not bad. 19.
Yeah.
There seems to be a false end.
A what?
False bottom.
Touch the bottom.
Ah,
A false
okay.
bottom.
Right, so she'll examine that. She'll open the false bottom to the chest.
Look it, I can't breathe.
It's like it's magical darkness, just like it was on the hatch.
She goes, hang in there, Nexus. And she's gonna take a leap of faith, part her into the darkness, clutching the bag.
Alright.
Wait. Nick's got in the bag too?
No, in the
No.
box.
Holding the 25.
Okay, you pop up. Yeah,
Okay. Oh, I
Oh, yeah,
can see
that
now.
really got us out.
Okay. Alright, so as soon as she pops out the other end, she'll use that.
yeah, you
Sorry, go
still
ahead.
have an action to dash, and you have your 18 movement.
Okay. So with that, she's gonna immediately open the bag and think of Lorcan.
No, do your
My head pokes out and
But
goes,
yeah, you know that it might not be as fast as you are.
right. But my head is
Well,
sticking
that's
out for
true.
air.
That's true. Alright, so yes, that's fair. Before
only
she
6
thinks of that,
seconds.
she's gonna take a look around. So she's
So
going
if
to
you
move.
want to pull one of them out of the bag, you can only go 40 feet.
Couldn't we
That's
just
fine.
poke our
No.
heads out so we can breathe?
5. Where do
Yeah,
you go?
so she's
5.
looking. So she just sees corridor 5, 10. Oh, looks like it just goes back on itself. Yeah, she's gonna go that way.
15,
15, 20.
20,
Where are we?
I have no clue.
30, 25, 40.
I'm trying to see where Nick's is.
I'm moving you guys with her. You are one back. There. Okay, and you can use your action to pull one of them out of the bag. You pull Lorcan or Cinder.
And she's not gonna pull them out just yet. She's going to use her action to dash around the corner.
Alright. So let me move you. 5, 10. I'm wearing
Mhm.
2.
So she sees, what does she see? Corridor and...
Corridor, path, path.
I don't think this is a way out.
I don't know.
Which one did you go? 15,
Mm-hmm.
30,
Okay.
20,
Corridor.
25, 30, 35,
Mm-hmm.
40.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Well, let's have it go again. 'cause we
So
can't
let's
do it
go again, but it's almost been 1 minute
Oh man, we're gonna die.
since you guys been here. Next,
Alright.
you're gonna go your 40 feet.
Yep.
5, 10. Yep.
So
15.
there's there's a path there and a path there, right?
Yep.
Okay.
15, 20, 25,
Should go down 30,
30,
35,
35,
40.
40. So yeah, you see it's a square. So there's a path here and a path here.
Okay.
Would you pull out the bag or do you not? Or do you walk?
Yeah, she'll pull Orkin out of the bag now.
Okay. So Lorcan, you get pulled out of the bag.
Yeah, Lorcan pulls Cinder out the back.
Lorcan pulls you out of the bag. Lorcan, that means you still have 30 feet of movement.
Yeah, I'll just go to this corner.
Alright.
10. Damn, this is a long path. Christ, I will go as far as I can.
20 more feet. Alright. Nix.
Another corner at the other end, Nix.
Okay.
Wait, have I been here before?
No.
That was just me thinking to myself.
Oh. I love it.
We can tell it's like the red. It's a different like level, like a reddish hue to it, unlike the one that was like greenish.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that something that's evident or no? Is it-
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Nix, you
Alright,
got
so Nix is
50.
gonna-
If you dash, you got 80.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So excuse me, Cinder. Stick together,
is a-
Cinder. Sorry about the bag. She's gonna be faster.
5, 10,
There's another
15,
corner down here.
20, 25, 30.
And she's next to you, Lorcan. She goes, where? Corner. Oh, here.
40.
Uh,
40 if you move the next 5 feet.
Yeah.
And then you're
So-
fine.
All right, I'll go ahead. Everyone's trying to stick together. So she's gonna dash to the end of the corridor. 5, 10, yeah. Okay.
Cinder, quick, come this way.
That's her turn.
You threw me in the bag. I'm going the other way. No, I'm kidding.
I was just checking the
You see
distance.
a big opening here.
Big opening. That's what she said.
You see what
Oh,
looks like a step. Like it seems to be stairs.
Okay. There's stairs down here
Stairs? We've not seen
Hmm.
stairs yet.
that lead up. You said
Yeah, it would be like a step.
they seem to be leading up.
Cinder, it's your turn.
dashing through the snow.
No.
Nix, do you know he stuffed me in a bag?
I was there.
Alright, it's been a minute.
Another minute.
No, it's been 1 minute now.
Yeah. We're gonna die.
Working.
At least I'm not dying alone.
Look, it'll charge down to the corner. So 10, 20,
So if you move 30 feet, you can then hold your action for when they move.
30 feet. That whole match when they did them.
Next, your turn.
She'll head towards the steps. What's that? 30. Okay. And she sees this. So she sees that, right? So she kind of comes around and looks at
Yeah,
them.
as you see stairs going up. You can't exactly see past the stairs. You have to go up the stairs.
Okay. She goes, hold up. Yeah, so she's gonna go up the steps, yeah. So 5, so 10, 15. Yeah.
You can move your 10 feet if you go on back. And now you can see the top. You
Mhm.
see several bedrolls extended. You see a slightly raised platform
with an altar, but it looks almost like a tomb, like it could be opened.
Should I move that extra 30 feet?
She goes, yeah, you.
Cinder's still in your way.
Ah.
Oh, Cinder, push him.
Is
She
it my
goes, there's
turn?
some kind of. Sorry, she's just going to communicate. She goes, there's some bedrolls and an altar up the steps.
There's bread rolls.
Bedroll. Always thinking with your stomach, even when Nexus is in danger, Lorcan. Okay.
You still have your action and you can use it.
Alright, how much she's gone, like what? 40?
You've got
Up
40.
to-
You've got 40.
Yeah. Can. Does she. Oh, 40 left. If she dashes. Sure, she'll
Yeah, you can get
dash
to
towards to the altar, yeah, but not like touch or anything, just like so next time she can investigate it.
No, that would take out her own cheating, by the way.
All right, so she goes, I'm gonna approach it cautiously. Calm down when you can, and that's fine.
Hey, Cinder.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. You went up?
You
Ah,
went up,
yeah.
35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60.
You can move 30 up, so that's 10 and 31.
I moved 60 to.
No, Lorcan.
Oh,
Just holding his movement for when you move.
okay. Hey, Larkin, you coming?
Right behind you.
Yeah, it's your turn.
I'm out walking. And
Does his dash go off? Because he's waited for Cinder.
It's already been.
Oh, it's been my bad.
30. Wow, what is this place?
I don't know.
Did I do an investigation roll?
You have a free investigation.
Is he giving off light? Wait, I have a torch, don't I?
You do. But there's 2 torches here.
15.
There's 2 braziers, sorry.
How's a 15?
This room, there's something off about it. Like, this seems to be the center. Who did that? What is that?
That's me. Sorry, it's my detect magic. Sorry to throw you
I
off.
know the range of it. Please take it away.
Okay. Okay.
Is bright. I see the light.
Thank you. Because it goes through walls and it doesn't. Your thing doesn't go through walls. So, please don't do that. You feel like there's something off about this room. Like this feels like the center of the labyrinth. Yet nothing happened when you guys got here.
Huh. Is this not the way out?
So if we don't make it out in the 5 minutes, Nexus dies?
Yeah.
I'm taking a nap.
I can't go any further, so.
You can die.
Oh. But I wanted to know what that altar was.
Oh, is that what you wanted to investigate?
Oh,
You
no,
said-
I just did it in general, it's fine.
Right, okay.
But I will move up there
You
anyway.
can move up there, yeah. To be next to Nix.
It looks like a bathtub.
Do not. Actually, no. You know what? You go lie down on that altar, Cinder. Why don't you?
I might.
Yeah, that's it.
I might be willing.
Nix.
She'll examine the altar with, kind of look at it closely with through her goggles.
There is
Investigation.
illusory magic. And you can give me an investigation.
Illusion, man.
Maybe it can cure me.
22? Yeah, I think so.
22. It's laced with
23. Sorry. It's laced with what? Sorry.
so it's laced with illusion and it's laced with abjuration.
I have no idea what that means.
And it doesn't give you the same vibe as the other chest and hatch to it. Looks different. Looks different.
As in. How so? Different as like the other ones would just teleport around. This one seems a bit
Different, yeah.
final. Maybe it's not like gonna tell different. Okay. Is anything else give you like that vibe in this room? It's just the altar.
No, you investigated the altar.
That's fine. She goes, I'm getting illusionary vibes. So it's an illusion. It's not. Is it really an altar, or is it not? Is it just giving the
Just the
aura?
first, just the top that looks like an illusion.
Okay. So she'll step a little closer without really touching it. She wants to see if she can see through like, see what's underneath the altar, if that's possible. If it's an altar, yeah.
Sure, but that will take your action.
To look?
Yeah, because you already got your free investigation.
Ah, gotcha. She'll tell them, yeah, it's shrouded in. I know it's not going to mean much to both of you, but there's illusion and there's powerful protective magic around this altar. Abjuration.
Harmful?
Usually, abjuration does not harm unless it's protecting something or warding something.
Okay.
Cinder, or are you doing anything else?
Yeah. I'm gonna.
Wait, Cinder, before next, you're not using your action.
She'll let. I'll use her action. I'll use the action to investigate the old like.
Okay,
Into
that's
the
what I
illusion.
wanted to check. Because you just went quiet.
Yeah.
So your turn was over.
No, I was just thinking. That's all.
Okay, so give me another investigation.
Gross. I'm gonna use a reroll for that. That was a gross roll.
The gross roll.
It was gross. That was not much better. That was not much better. That is gonna be 13, I think. Yeah, it was a 5.
You can't see through it.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12,
Do you have any
Yeah.
inspiration?
Wait, actually,
13.
no. 13 is not enough to see through.
Do you have inspiration?
No, I used to reroll.
Yeah, you can use
I don't have inspiration.
and the reroll, I suppose.
Yeah, 13 doesn't allow you to see through it.
Okay. She'll wait for an. She'll wait. What's
Cinder,
up, Tom?
what do? Are you gonna lay on the altar?
Everybody into the pool. 5, 10, 15, 20.
Okay, Cinder, you go to put your hands on the altar, and you get sucked in. Yeah, Cinder, give me 100.
Oh no.
Okay. I will message you, Cinder. Private message Peter
On Zoom or Discord?
on Zoom. You two reacts to Cinder disappearing through it.
What the? Oh, bugger. Next, we've lost Cinder.
I know.
Again.
I know.
I know. Shall we follow him?
I
Don't
guess.
follow me. Oh, I can't say anything. Dang it.
I'm Sam.
Well, let me. I need. I don't. I can't. I don't touch it until I can figure out where it goes.
That's fair.
All right, Larkin. What are you holding for?
Me, I am holding to wait to jump into the bag of holding.
Okay. Right, next.
Can she attempt to try and peer through the illusion again?
Yeah, we do
Yeah.
investigation. Come on.
Check the bag of holding for me. I see nothing but blackness.
16.
Should have dark vision then.
16's enough. There's a swirling. There's still a swirling. Whatever Cinder did when he lay on it triggered something. There's a swirling portal that is waning.
A portal?
It's disappearing.
Alright.
Shall we go through?
We have to get Cinder.
Why not? And
So
I'll jump
she
into
holds out the bag.
holding.
Yeah. And
Let's
you
do
jump-
this the safe way.
Roll me a D100.
Who?
Next.
We have to. So we might not even end up in the same place.
Do we get advantage on that? Like, because
Yeah.
we're going in trying to go after him through the same portal?
Sure.
Like, or whatever advantage you mean. Can we pick the best
Roll
roll?
I'll pick the best roll. Roll again. Okay.
79. It's closer.
What? It's close.
As you jump in there.
Oh.
I gotta keep my mouth shut for 2 weeks.
For a week. We're playing next
Oh,
week. because
okay.
This one was to make up for last time. However, I will give the players a little sneak peek of something. If you're still looking at the map, zoom out so that the entire map is in your view.
Wait.
I'm not on. Oh,
Oh. That's the whole maze.
let me zoom out for the viewers here. That is a big one.
I did that entire map in dynamic landing in 20 minutes today.
Damn.
Awesome. Totally
Nice.
awesome.
There you go. It is your second labyrinth in the campaign. And you may or may not have passed through it. You're definitely not in the labyrinth anymore.
Oh.
That
Any
doesn't
of
fill me
you.
with confidence.
Now, whether you're with Cinder or where you're at, you don't know.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
I may
Well, next week.
or may not be on another plane of existence
Indeed. So,
where I'm level 20.
You're always on a different plane of existence, you Cinder. It's fine.
thank you everyone for watching. We appreciate all the support. If you wanna know what's going to happen for the rest of the week, we're going to have Street Saban on Saturday here on Twitch, correct?
I do believe everyone is up for it except Herbie, who is in
Yeah.
detention anyway. So
Herbie will be in detention bog and is not there. They're not going to be there this week. But otherwise, we'll be here for Strixhaven at 10 a.m. EST. We also have Curse of Strahd at 7 p.m. EST, I believe. On Sunday, we also have the start of a new campaign that derived from a one-shot at 10 a.m. EST on the Discord. And if you want to join our Discord, the link will be posted in chat. And we have an amazing community. There's going to be a few other games coming up. But we'll be back with Legends of Methis next week. Because I did miss a couple of sections, so we're trying to make up for it. So next week, let's find out what happens when we left this labyrinth.
Hell yes. Be good fun.
Alright, so thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you Saturday.
Bye.